Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag-and-drop fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way. I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to The Next Reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Before sunrise is over. Isn't everything we do in life a way to be loved a little more?
All right, I have an admittedly insane idea, but if I don't ask you this, it's just going to haunt me the rest of my life. I have no idea what your situation is, but I feel like we have some kind of connection, right?
Yeah, me too.
Great. So listen, here's the deal. This is what we should do. You should get off the train with me here in Vienna and come check out the town. We just got into Vienna today, and we're looking for something fun to do. Sprechen Sie English?
Yeah, of course, yeah. Do you speak German for a change?
Now I'm gonna call my best friend in Paris, who I'm supposed to have lunch with in 8 hours. Okay?
Okay.
Ring, ring. Pick up the phone.
Hello?
I don't think I'm gonna be able to make it for lunch today, I'm sorry. I met a guy on the train and I got off with him in Vienna. We're still there.
Are you crazy?
Probably.
Andy, Before Sunrise, part of the Before Trilogy, Richard Linklater, and we are doing this series. I have to tell you, this movie has some very high praise. Did you notice that? I didn't remember when because I saw it long ago, and then I guess I was finished with it and didn't think about it. But looking at it again, it is. There are people who really, really love this movie, really love it. And that surprised me. I didn't remember it as quite so beloved.
Is that because of your own personal feelings? Is that where we're going with this?
No, legitimately, I did not remember this movie as huge. And mostly it's related to, as I was turning it on, I was like, why did we choose this trilogy? Like, I don't remember why we chose it, because it was a franchise trilogy, because we're interested in talking about Linklater. And then as I started looking it up, I was very surprised at how many people feel very strongly about what this movie inspires in them.
Okay. It's interesting that that you're so surprised by that, because I mean, it is something that did spur a trilogy. And I feel like if it was a one-off that, you might, and it was this popular, you might be more surprised. But when it's something that's this popular and ends up leading to more films, I feel like that's kind of an expected place to be.
I guess that's true. It just seems like such a simple film that it's the kind of film that wouldn't have made a trilogy. And the fact that I saw the second one, but gave the third no attention. I haven't seen the third one. And so I don't spend a lot of time thinking about the before trilogy. And so it surprised me again. That's it. I was surprised, and here we are. How did you, is this one that's a repeat view for you?
I mean, I know I've seen it a few times before this watch. I likely saw it. I know I didn't see it in theaters. I probably saw it sometime after that, like rented it. And then I know I watched it again before I watched Before Sunset. And then I somehow missed Before Midnight. But I do enjoy these characters, and I actually really enjoy the way that Linklater crafts this story. And I guess I end up being in the camp that really does enjoy the film. So I think that there's something kind of magical and very heartwarming with this film.
That's good. I'm excited to hear more about what you think. It's rated NC-17.
It actually is rated R, surprisingly, for some strong language. Isn't that interesting? This is a film. Is it in German? Are the Germans swearing to one another horrifically? What it boils down to is the number of times that the F word is used. You may recall that is a silly thing that the MPAA has established, that if you use it more than a certain number of times, then the film is automatically R, especially if they're used in a sexual connotation. That almost instantly turns it into an R. Because, they're afraid of sexuality. They're so afraid. And they're terrified of words. I think that's the other thing. Just really scared of words. We as a society are scared of words. That's not guns. Not blood, but words. Not guns or blood, but words, and words about sex. Good. We're doing great. Okay. Before Sunrise. Before our conversation about Before Sunrise, where do you stand with Richard Linklater? Like, where did you first come into Linklater as a filmmaker? Do you recall? Well, Andy, I'm glad you asked. Richard Linklater. I started watching Ricard. I call him Ricard, but it's a little game that we play. I started watching Richard Linklater before I was paying attention to what were the films that he was doing. I think, like, I'm sure I watched, Slacker and Dazed and Confused before I was paying attention to the fact that they were Linklater films. I actually feel quite fondly toward those movies, and Suburbia. I enjoy my time with Suburbia, and then I find the films like Waking Life and A Scanner Darkly fascinating to watch, and I really enjoy my experience there, even though, interestingly, I'd probably call those minimalist films in some way, like in the Wikipedia way. For those who are not members, we had a conversation in our member pre-show, and we were talking about, what makes a minimalist film, and the fact that Wikipedia has a struggling relationship with what that means. So
I really enjoy those. I wasn't keen on movies like Fast Food Nation. I didn't like the way it was adapted. I felt like it was, I'm glad it got made. I didn't care for it. I didn't like Everybody Wants Some. I enjoyed Where'd You Go, Bernadette. I think it's kind of a roller coaster for me. What about you? Are you a Linkhead? A Link laggy?
I kind of am the same. I fluctuate with interest and disinterest in his projects. I've seen 10 movies that he's directed, so maybe close to half of the projects that he's done. I seem to have missed some of the big ones that I am quite interested in checking out. Like I really do still want to see Bernie. I've heard great things about that one. Fast Food Nation, I actually missed that one. I'm curious about Me and Orson Welles, that one that he did.
I haven't seen that, but I can't believe I didn't name drop School of Rock. I adore School of Rock. I think it's great. So go ahead.
As we talked about in our Pitch Perfect trilogy series, that was the highest grossing musical comedy until Pitch Perfect 2 knocked it out of that slot. So it may be his most successful film. Like when I look at the list of films, my hunch is that's probably at the box office, the biggest box office that he's had. Boyhood is probably the one that's had the most recognition award-wise, and I think a lot of that falls to his style of storytelling. And that's what I think is interesting about what he does. Like all the way back to Slacker, which is his second film after It's Impossible to Learn to Plow by Reading Books, which is his first feature, which is a very probably minimalist sort of film. He got into these films that were very conversational, and that seemed to be something that he was very focused on. And it didn't seem until my recollection, The Newton Boys, where he suddenly was actually going to do a real story. And that was just kind of a gangster story. Like a period gangster story. And then he kind of goes back to Waking Life. And so he's a very interesting filmmaker in that he started in kind of art house cinema with Slacker and always seems to go back to it. Like there are a lot of filmmakers who start there, and then once they get out, they just kind of stay in kind of the Hollywood system. But when you look at the sorts of projects that he keeps doing, he does Last Flag Flying, which was that military thing with the 3 vets, and Where'd You Go, Bernadette, which was an adaptation. But then he turns around and does Apollo 10.5, A Space Age Childhood, which is that kind of animated story that is kind of a somewhat biopic and somewhat a little more quirky and different than his other sorts of stories. So he seems to always be happy to kind of play in that space. And you look at what he did with Boyhood, the fact that they filmed that over so many years, like that's what he does. And with Before Sunrise, it seemed to be this thing that he wanted. I mean, there's a sense of a autobiographical element to the story, but it seemed to be this idea of let's explore this conversation with these two people over a period over 12, 15, 17 hours, something like that. And just have this relationship develop in this kind of bubble out of time before they have to return to reality. And I think that's really interesting to see what he did. And then we'll talk about this over the next couple episodes, how they decided to progress that story. And so I don't know. I find him to be an interesting filmmaker. I know I've seen half of his films. I like maybe half of those, but I find he's a compelling filmmaker. And I guess that's where I land with him, is he's always a filmmaker who will pique my curiosity, even if I don't end up going to watch his films.
I could not agree more with that assessment, and that I think there is something to see with his films, and it's one of the reasons I was so interested in coming back to this one and this trilogy to see what the experience is watching these films, especially after so many years. And so I have to say, I feel like the first time I saw it, I was very much in this sort of contextual space where I could watch it and listen to these characters and hear what they're saying and really empathize with what they were going through. And I think I connected with the aspirational view or the aspirational sort of script in there and was able to internalize it as my experience of what I would love my sort of a love story to be. Like, it's just something that I could really connect with at the time. I cannot connect with it anymore almost at all. I find both of these characters so impossibly insufferable, I want to punch them in the neck, both of them. I think it is impossible to imagine how she could find anything appealing in Ethan Hawke's character. They grate on me. I felt like I wanted to pluck the tiny hairs out of my nose for most of this movie until the very end, when they two parts. When the actors are being rude to them on the bridge, I thought that was pleasant. I thought they deserved more rudeness. And when there is this weird magical experience for me when they are standing on the train station and they're about to separate. It twisted my guts in like the most intense way. So how I could swing from hating the choices I've made in my life that lead me to watching most of this movie to, my God, this is a romantic, transcendent moment, is amazing in this movie. Like, I ended the movie feeling actually moderately okay with that experience, even though I hate these people so much. Like, I really could not stand most of it. The dialogue felt forced. It felt like written, not written, like improv, not improv, like they were trying to write it and be romantic. It felt like there were way too many people's impressions of what romance is in this movie. And as a result, I had a more negative opinion on it than most. It was pretty boring.
Do you recall at all if this was the same stance you had when you first saw it? Or do you feel like it's changed because you're now an old grumpy man?
I think it's the old grumpy man bit, because that's what I mean. Like the first time I watched this movie, I think I was in a place of sort of more connecting with it. Like I the movie came out and what year did it come out? It
95.
was Before Sunrise was 95, and so I was not married yet. I didn't see this. Like, I was living in Korea at the time, and so I'm sure 95? I didn't see it in Korea.
No, you weren't living in Korea.
95, 96. I graduated no, you're right. It was 96, 97. So I must have seen it in college.
Yeah.
When we were seniors. And I feel like it was at that point, I probably took the girl I was dating to see it. Maybe that's how it was. Jeez. Anyway, I feel like it was something that really connected with a young me, a me that wanted to travel and do all this stuff and have that kind of spark of romance that would last to an all-night conversation and such a perilous departure. I thought that I think that was, I could really personalize it. And it's amazing to me what a little distance gives me.
Well, it's interesting to me that you do have that reaction, because I feel like I'm probably reacting similarly to how I reacted when I saw it back, in, I don't know, 96, probably somewhere around there, for the first time. I find it magical, and I really enjoy the characters. I love the way it flows. I don't feel like it's written. It feels pretty natural, the way things are kind of moving and how things are going back and forth and the flow of everything. Like, I really find that I connected with the vibe of it all, and I enjoyed this sense of space that we're left with these two people here, where they're trying, I don't know. It's an interesting moment, and I like the way the film sets it up, where I'm trying to remember exactly. I think that it's, is it Jesse who says this, but they're talking about like how they're kind of in this space where everything is kind of almost stopped, and I feel like it kind of creates that bubble where, I mean, obviously time is ticking, but they get off this train and largely, I mean, they're in a place they don't know, and they're just kind of wandering and having these kind of stream of consciousness conversations. And it's not really until that moment, as they're walking back toward the train station, to the train station in the morning, and he actually says something like, "Oh, we're back in real time," and that's like the click. And like everything before that was like this beautiful, just kind of flowing stream. And I like the way that it just has this tone to it, and I don't know, the sense of love and cynicism and connection and the way that they bond and find things to connect about. I don't know. I found it to be meaningful, and I can see why So many people really praise this film and this trilogy the way they do, because there is an interesting connection. And I don't know, for me, I feel, I don't know, it's one of those things where it's just like, having this sort of experience when you're young, I feel a lot of people always want to do something like this and don't necessarily do it. And I certainly had experiences that weren't like this, but that were still meaningful in some capacity that I hold near and dear to my heart. And I think that's, part of the reason that I connect with it so much is because there is that feeling of youth and that sense of being in a place and trying to start figuring yourself out. And I like the way that this film explores that.
There is something strange about like the feeling of, I think part of the thing that I struggle with is that there's so much of it that feels like I'm eavesdropping on somebody else's conversation, and I don't like the way they talk to each other. Like, it doesn't feel natural, and it doesn't feel like it's hard for me to say this like authentically, because I do find I really like movies that don't have like narrative driving them in some cases. I don't like this one. It feels like it's weirdly on rails at the same time that it's absolutely meandering. We just sort of drive with them. They're walking conversation through, fields, cemeteries, restaurants. There's the poet who says, give me a word, I'll write you a poem, which it's just so hyper cringy for me. Like, I just couldn't get through those sequences fast enough. And at the same time, sort of wondering, like, how are they going to build to something when I'm feeling really pretty empty through the whole thing? And then they get to that train station and they click back in, as you say, the switch is flipped and I'm suddenly in the story. It was a very strange feeling for me.
Are you in the story at the start when they're first on the train before they get off? Like when they actually first have their meeting?
Not really. I found their mealtime together was just rough conversation. I was like, I would never choose to eavesdrop on this conversation if I were sitting in that train car. And that's kind of what I want, right? With a movie like this, I want to be sitting, if I'm going to watch a story like this, like My Dinner with André, if I want to watch a story like this, then I want them to be having a conversation with two people that are charismatic enough for me to want to pay attention over their shoulder and kind of hear, like, are they having a really interesting conversation? And I didn't get that from this movie. I found their personalities, like that mix of, I'm going to slowly reveal to you that I'm actually a romantic, wrapped in a cynic's body. I felt like pretty early reality bites, Gen X-y kind of a worldview that I think I just am finished with. I just didn't find it an interesting character mix.
Well, but I think that's why it works.
Yeah.
Because this is the mid-90s. This is that period of time, and these are those people. And so I don't know. I feel like they are very much, 90s youth. And this is kind of the sensibilities that I think was running rampant. And I think, the reason that perhaps you connected with it more was because both of us were in that mindset.
That's
this
who we were.
Space.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly who we were. And I mean, to a certain extent, you do, like, as soon as you finish college, you go off and live in Korea for a year. And so it's like,
I did exactly that. Yeah.
And so, you're kind of off doing your own little thing. And so there's an interesting element to that world of kind of exploring the world and finding your place in it. And I do think there is a little bit of that. And to that end, it's going to be interesting to see how you feel as their lives progress every 9 years over the next couple films.
I think it will too. And here's an interesting aside, right? So you saw Waking Life, right?
Yes.
Jesse and Celise have I think it's less than 2 minutes. They have a conversation in Waking Life. It's an animated conversation, and they're in Austin and they're living together. Now that, of course, is non-canon to the Before trilogy because they are, Waking Life takes place in a dream state, right? So it's not it's not real. But as I age. And I remember having this sort of conversation with myself that I would have preferred seeing that part of the movie, like how their relationship, comes together. That I would have loved to have seen them come back together and give us, more of a, what was that Alan Alda one? Was it Same Time Next Year? Like just that experience of exploring their lives together, and having had them meet 6 months later. Like, I think that would have been a really a more interesting story for me to watch them age together and not every 9 years. So I'll be interesting to see how I age, or how my age has aged with the movie as they get older and have these kinds of conversations. I think generally I found their Gen X-y youth a real detractor for me. I was impatient in the same way I was not able to. What I'm hearing you say is that you were able to connect with that part of you to still find like that connection with this movie, and I just could not.
You have since killed that part of your youth, is what you're saying.
Well, I stuffed a ball gag in its mouth.
Oh, wow. Keeping it in the box. Bring out the gimp. Is that what you say when you're ready to explore your youth again?
I do. That's it. Bring out the gimp. Pete's feeling frisky. Let's watch Before Sunrise. That's funny.
You don't connect with the youth, or with the characters. But it's a tricky film to talk about performances and actors in relation to the characters, because I feel like there's so much of Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy infused in the two characters. But I am curious to at least kind of get your thoughts on what do you feel that the two actors are bringing to the table here. And we should just, before we have this conversation, we should just say that Linklater wrote this script with Kim Krizan, or I'm not sure how you say her name, Krizan. Yeah. Who she had been in a few of his films before, what was she in? She was in
Dazed and Confused.
Slacker. She was in Slacker. Dazed and Confused. She ended up in Waking Life also, yeah. And he brought her on specifically because he wanted to make sure that he could balance the tone between male and female voices. And then it took a long time. It took 9 months to find the actors for it. And by the time they finally latched onto Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy, they went through a process of actually kind of reworking the script. The two of them have, uncredited reworking of the script. According to Julie Delpy, it was like largely rewritten by the two of them.
Yeah.
And we will see later that they actually are co-credited on the subsequent films. So there is very much a part of them in it. So to that end, how do these two actors feel for you as far as like the way, what they're bringing to it? And again, it's tricky to balance with the characters, but I'm curious, your take on the actors here.
Well, I'm in the bag for Ethan Hawke generally, but more his, like the stuff that has come since he's aged, right? Predestination, The Purge, Moon Knight. I love Moon Knight. I haven't seen Black Phone yet, but I think that's a super interesting choice. And so I feel like this, I could say the exact same thing about Reality Bites that I could say about this. Like, this era of 90s Ethan Hawke represents something that I'm just sort of done with. I don't enjoy revisiting this particular time in film. It's grating to me. So I really like Ethan Hawke. I like the stuff that he does. He's been around for ever. And I definitely like more of his stuff than I don't. So this movie, he's doing something. It's more like a personality exercise, like or therapy. Like he's doing something. He's exercising a romantic demon that he's got to get out in these movies, and it's fine. Julie Delpy, I actually really quite enjoy. I think Julie Delpy is super charismatic and a lovely person, and I think part of the reason that I likely loved the movie, early on, was that I had that a super crush on her at the time of this movie. And so me personalizing my experience with the movie in the 90s when it came out was largely, I wonder what it would be like if I were Ethan Hawke in a train-side relationship with this person, because she's super charming. And so, I wonder what that would look like. So I am really I think she's great. Watching it this time, I was like, oh, it turns out she has some of the very same personality traits that are super grating in Ethan Hawke. It's that same sort of 90s, mid-90s sort of Gen X thing that I'm sort of done with. I have not seen as many things of hers as I have of Ethan Hawke. Are you? What's your situation on Julie Delpy?
Well, we talked about her on the show when we did our Europa episode, which she had done 5 years before this film.
Yeah.
I mean, she is incredibly busy. She's been in tons of stuff, and also has started her own directing career and like writing, directing. I mean, she was writing at the time that this came out, which is part of the reason, and so is Ethan Hawke. That's part of the reason that they had them work on the script with them. But I mean, she's keeping herself busy as a writer, director, producer, and even a composer. Like, she's really busy doing all sorts of stuff. I haven't seen a ton of her films. You know, unfortunately, An American Werewolf in Paris, I did see that. Of course, the Three Colors trilogy I saw. Random things like I saw The Hoax, that, you know, is an okay movie. And of course, things like Avengers: Age of Ultron. She pops up in stuff. The Bachelors, which they talked about on Trailer Rewind. So, you know, she's an interesting actress, and I really do enjoy seeing her perform. But I just haven't seen a lot of her work.
Did you say you saw Killing Zoe?
No.
That's one that I feel like gets mentioned with her a lot. And I Roger Avery, 1993. I'm curious about that.
Yeah, I haven't seen that one.
I'm going to put it on the list.
But I do think, I mean, you're right. I think that there is this element of her that feels very much, the way that she is in the film, she feels very Gen X. And even though she's coming to the story as kind of a very much a European character, she still has that feel to her. And so, I don't know, for me, again, I just kind of connect with that vibe with these two characters. And I do find that, you know, it's funny, when I think of Ethan Hawke, particularly in this period of time, I feel like he is the sort of actor who is really getting into writing, you know, poetry. And I feel like he even published a book of poetry or something. I can't remember if that's accurate or not, but I feel like he's the sort of person who has always been that way. But I think this period, probably because he was, you know, very much Gen X like us, was exploring his own artistic angles and coming up with poetry and finding these performances where he could do things that were a lot more interesting and unique. And so when you look at his career, especially in this period, I feel like he was really jumping into the Linklater mindset of exploring different types of storytelling. And so, because it's interesting, like he did Reality Bites a year before, you brought that up as kind of another of these Gen X films. And, you know, I think that that's an interesting comparison to this as far as characters, because I feel like there's, like, if you're going to watch a film that is still it's going to feel more Hollywood, but probably will still annoy you with its Gen X characters, look at that one.
Well, yeah.
Right? It's the same. It's the characters, I think, so much more than the actual story that is likely what's irking you about them.
I think that's really true, Andy. I think that's really true. And I think you could take this movie and put it in 1975 or 2005 and put different people in it, and it might be a movie that I really enjoy. I find the whole sort of aesthetic super grating, and the philosophy, like, there is something nice about watching a movie where the relationship builds toward, for lack of a better word, climax, through discussions around philosophy, because that's one of the things that this movie is really trying to land on, which is like, this is a relationship where people are getting to know one another over the course of this time based on what they think about stuff. And what they think about stuff is going to allow them to either open the gate to a romantic relationship or not. They've met cute on the train. They've listened to the Germans argue. I do like, there's a trope I didn't know existed, but I found on TV tropes. Reality has no subtitles, that if somebody is speaking a language that's not the core language and they don't understand the language, then we shouldn't. And so there are no subtitles of the German people arguing, so we don't get to know, because Ethan Hawke doesn't know, or Jesse doesn't know how to speak German. And so I that's an interesting trope I'd never heard framed that way. But I kind of like that that's how they kind of connect over this other people's fight. And then they start talking. And so there is something interesting about that leads to sex in the grass. So I like the idea that the premise of the movie is based on them getting into one another's minds, even if I'm not crazy about who they are or what those minds represent. I like the idea that this movie is presenting, that a relationship, a deep relationship, can come out of this sort of constant debate and discussion and sharing of an experience that is, for all intents and purposes, kind of unique. So that's all really good. Like, that's all good stuff that I can absolutely get behind. The challenge then for me is that when I don't love the people, it just makes it hard to be patient through the rest of the story. And
that's true of any film.
That's fine. That is exactly. But this film has nothing else, right? That this movie is only that. Like, it's very hard to latch on to something else.
Sure.
I don't get a feeling. It's not actually very interestingly shot. It's not like Lee Daniels' cinematography is not particularly compelling to me. There's nothing surprising or engaging going on in the camera. It's really a lot of walk and talk and sit and talk. And when you don't love just the two people, but you're only getting the two people, it's hard to fall in love with the movie.
It's interesting. You brought up the cinematography, and I can see your point, but at the same time, I also think an interesting element that Linklater does in the film is choose to have a lot of long takes, or where the camera is just walking like a dolly or whatever the case may be, or handheld on a Steadicam. And it's just a long shot as the actors converse. And so to that end, I really liked that they were giving us a longer kind of a moment to have these times with the characters. And I really did enjoy that. And I thought that was pretty nice. Something that we really haven't brought up in a very long time is Cinemetrics, the site that tells you the average shot length for movies. And I thought this might be an interesting series to look at. To get a sense, the average shot length in seconds for this film is 10.6 seconds. The longest shot in the film is 344.7 seconds, which is 5 3/4 minutes. So that was the longest shot in the film. And, I'm always impressed when filmmakers are able to kind of craft a story where you have these really long shots. And I mean, a 5+ almost 6 minute shot, it is pretty long. And even if it is just conversation that's happening, there's a lot of stuff that needs to go into kind of making that work and putting it into play. And so to that end, I think that it's simple cinematography, but I think it's designed in a way to allow the conversations to unfold. And whether you're connecting with them or not, I suppose, the important thing is that it's designed in a way to allow them to unfold.
Yeah. There are some interesting beats of their conversation that I think are interesting and telling. And I think one of them that actually was, a high point of, a movie that's kind of low points for me. But when they're having this conversation and they do the fake phone bit where they call their friends to talk about their experience that they had in the restaurant, I actually thought that was really that was an interesting choice for them because of what's going on sort of psychosocially between them and portraying this what the voices in their head are saying versus what they would say out loud to their partners in terms of an exercise in depicting romance. I kind of liked the depersonalization of it and the way they would talk to their friends. I thought that was an interesting sort of aesthetic choice that did work for me. So I want to make sure I sort of celebrate that. There are some things where the two people are maybe not acting like themselves that I find really, fun, sort of frivolous. Do you know where that long shot was?
It's a good question. I'm not exactly sure where that shot was.
There's so many walk talk. I'm actually scrubbing the movie right now, and
I don't know how to find it on Cinemetrics.
There are two, I'm talking about that shot where they're talking to one another on the phone, and there are two sequences, I think two, maybe three, where Linklater has this choice where they're in a location, they're at a restaurant or on the train or whatever, and he does these cutaways to other people at other tables and showcasing, here's what the experience is of these people, and now here are three people at another table smoking a cigarette, and here's an old lady drinking a beer talking to somebody, and that they do that, I think, on the train, and in another other restaurant and then in the restaurant where they're talking to each other. And then at the end of the movie, he cuts around to all the locations where Jesse and Celine have been over the course of their night, and they're empty. Those locations are empty. Those are more interesting sort of choices to me that I think are part of the storytelling that I think work. Like, I like the idea of how he cuts in the reality of the location and of these other people having conversations that we could be eavesdropping on, and then taking us back to our principal relationship, and even at the end, here are where all these other locations, there's nothing going on here, but now we're going to cut back to the train station and their departure, which I thought was a good choice. Look at me with all these good things. This is praise.
No, it's great. It's great. I mean, I really enjoy those moments too. And that beat at the end, that kind of the world waking up, I guess you could almost say, and where you get to see all those spaces again was kind of touching and really interesting in a way that I think reflects on what a space can do in a film, and I think that's pretty interesting.
I really think so. And it's a little bit jarring because actually I said it wrong. They say goodbye and then they do all this,
right,
all these cuts back.
As they're on the train.
They're on separate trains. Yeah. Or bus and train. And I think that is I think that's actually a really a neat touch. And it's kind of surprising. Like, it took me a second to realize, we've been there. I think it was the alley and the crate to realize that, this is familiar. These locations look totally different in the absence of the relationship that was in them last night.
There's no magic anymore. There's no sense of life. It's a space. It doesn't have the same tone to it. So
yes, yeah, totally.
That the long shot, the 5-minute shot, starts in the 18th minute of the film. That's somewhere around there.
18th minute.
Yeah. It's shot number 148 of the film, which is, they've numbered the shots, 530 total shots in the film.
Interesting, because at minute 18, they're talking to the rude actors on the bridge. Then they get on the bus or the trolley or whatever. It is the...
so it's the shot while they're on the bus.
Yeah, they're talking on the bus. And they're,
okay.
Or the whatever it is.
That's what it is.
Yep. So it's a train and talk.
I was thinking about that as I was watching this, like the complexities of a film project. I mean, a bus is easier. You just put a bunch of extras on it and you have your crew on it and you just kind of drive around and just have the bus driver kind of follow a certain path as they just kind of have this conversation. But I was thinking about the complexities of that when they're doing it on the train, and like, God, they have to, like, they're walking through the train. So you're seeing all these different people, and then you're having to, kind of cast this and just say, okay, so this train is going to go, we're just going to follow this route all day long and just film this conversation until we're done. And it's like, it seems like so much work and time and money and everything.
It's so much work. God, making movies
it's so hard.
So hard. God. Well, okay. What other hot points do you have?
A couple other points. First, the music. I did like that Linklater brought just an interesting swath of classical music throughout the film. I don't know how much of it had been written in Vienna, but I do feel like Vienna is one of those spaces in Europe that is kind of a hub for a lot of classical music to have been created. And so I enjoyed that we had, as I was watching through the credits, it was Purcell and Beethoven and Vivaldi and Strauss and Bach all had different pieces in here. And so I liked that he was kind of allowing for that as kind of a tone for this film and this space. But then also that we had some other music throughout. And I liked that he was kind of giving us a sense of kind of this space, but also these characters. I thought that was nice.
I love the music and I love the sense of space. I think you're absolutely right. And I don't necessarily know that you need to be a classical fan, but it's better to know also, I think, that like so much of the where they were is where it was happening. Like Vienna was, and just Austria kind of writ large was a real It was a hotbed for classical heads in the 17 and 1800s.
Classical heads. What was the song that they listened to in the testing booth?
Oh, the listening booth?
Listening booth,
I don't know. I don't remember what it was.
That was I really liked that song. And it was an interesting song that I don't know if I had heard before. But I liked it. Like it had this sense to it, and it allowed for kind of a little bit of that romance. Is it Come Here by Kath Bloom?
Kath Bloom, Come Here, yeah.
Okay. I really enjoyed
this is interesting. Linklater, that's the only time I withheld anything from the cast. The lyrics were in the script, but they'd never heard the song.
Oh.
That's sweet. That's, interesting choice.
Yeah, that is really interesting. The other thing that I wanted to just briefly mention is poetry. I kind of talked about how there was this sense of Ethan Hawke being this young artist who is writing poetry and novels and stuff when he was in this period of his life. And there was this, the poem that is in this film here, actually a couple poems, I wanted to just mention because I think that that's an interesting element I feel like there's an important part of it to the film. And you get a couple poems that I think there's a nice sense to it. The first is this poem by David Jewell that was written for the film called Delusion Angel. And it is probably one of my favorite moments in the film when this, I don't want to necessarily call him a homeless person, but this person who's panhandling has this method of panhandling where he says, I'm not just asking for money. I will write a poem for you. And if you like it, you can give me some money. And I thought that, that was really interesting. I also thought it was really interesting following the moment where she had her palm read, because in a way, in both cases, they were paying for somebody to provide them a service that, they might find interesting or not, but they were paying. And he had such criticism for her about the palm reading, but they both were totally fine and had no issues with paying somebody to write this little poem. But I loved that poem. I loved that little poem that he wrote, Delusion Angel. I thought that was great, and how they threw the word milkshake at him and he managed to write it in a really nice way.
Yeah, it was a fine poem. It was. I wonder, like, the actor, was he a street poet? Like, that seems like a Linklater thing to do. I'll give you $50 to be in this movie and write a poem.
David Jewell wrote the poem. He's an American performance poet.
So that wasn't David
the street
Jewell,
poet was Dominic Castell, who played the street poet. So different person.
Bummer.
So, but the other one, and again, I just think it's interesting, and it for me it fit the tone and the vibe. But it was when they're sitting on the, I don't know what it is, in the middle of the roundabout or whatever, and he's talking about that Dylan Thomas recording of that W.H. Auden poem as I walked out one evening. And I mean, I looked up the lyrics to that. I posted a link to that reading in our Discord chat. For those of you who are in our Discord community, you can hop into the chat when we're recording these live. And I posted it there because I was listening to it. And I think that it is a really romantic poem. And I think there's a lot of, connection to that poem and the other one to kind of the tone of the film. So I like that there is that element to this film.
And I don't believe any of the poetry in the movie is by Ethan Hawke. I think that's a safe bet.
Yes, you're correct.
Any other hot items?
No, I think that's it. So we will be right back, everybody. But first, our credits.
The next reel is a production of True Story FM, engineering by Andy Nelson, music by Ty Simon, Oriel Novella, and Eli Catlin. Andy usually finds all the stats for the awards and numbers at d-numbers.com, boxofficemojo.com, imdb.com, and wikipedia.org. You can find the show at truestory.fm, and if your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, please consider doing that for our show. All right, Andy, how to do it awards season. Did it win all the things because of all the romance?
It's an independent film, and I think it probably had a harder time because of that, getting the opportunity to be in as many awards circuits. I mean, a lot of times you have to pay to get into these things. And so that is an element for filmmakers. They did get into Sundance. It didn't win anything at Sundance, although it did get distribution. For awards, it did win one award and had 7 other nominations. At the Award Circuit Community Awards, it was nominated for 4 awards, but lost all of them. Best Director, lost to David Fincher for 7. Best Leading Actor, but lost to Nicolas Cage for Leaving Las Vegas. Best Leading Actress, lost to Elizabeth Shue, also for Leaving Las Vegas. And Best Original Screenplay, which lost to Toy Story. At the Berlin International Film Festival, Richard Linklater won the Silver Berlin Bear for Best Director. He was also nominated for the Golden Berlin Bear, but he lost to Bertrand Tavernier for Fresh Bait. At the Chicago Film Critics Association Awards, he and Kim were nominated for Best Screenplay, but lost to Christopher McQuarrie for The Usual Suspects. And, of course, the MTV Movie and TV Awards, Best Kiss did get nominated, but lost to, you'll like this, Pete, Lauren Holly and Jim Carrey for Dumb and Dumber.
What's funny is I would watch every one of the movies that you just referenced before I would watch this again so easily. I think that might be telling about me.
Yes, I think so.
All right. How about at the box office? It seems, I don't know. Is that mean? It seems mean. It's an independent film, but it blew the doors off. Everybody fell in love with it. So surely it made $1 bazillion.
For the first film in the story of Jesse and Celine, Linklater had a budget of $2.5 million, which is $4.2 million in today's dollars. The movie premiered at Sundance, then it opened 8 days later on January 27th, 1995 in a limited release, where it opened opposite Highlander, The Final Destination, probably something that you also would put on first. The film opened in 11th place and stayed in theaters for 4 weeks. It ended up earning $5.5 million domestically and $452,000 internationally for a total gross of $10 million in today's dollars. That lands the film with an adjusted profit per finished minute of $58,000. Not a lot, but still something that generated a lot of talk and interest in the core trio at the heart of it, enough to return 9 years later.
Okay. I'm on board. I'm on the before train, Andy. I'm on it, and I'm going to watch the next one and the one after that.
You're going to have to.
I'm going to have to. Yeah. So it didn't, these people don't appeal to me. I hope in age they also gain in charisma.
Well,
much like I did, I hope they shake off that Gen X sheen from the 90s.
Well, I think that's why I think it's going to be an interesting exploration with you, who were this person in 1995 and now are ashamed of it.
Saying that.
And now you're ashamed of it and don't want to remember that era of your life. And so
you who were this person in the 1990s and are still this person? Is that what you're saying? That's the contrast?
I've not grown up at all, Pete. That's where I am. So we'll see how it works for you as we continue the series to see, every 9 years, are we seeing growth in the characters and finding a new place for them and where they are in life at the time. So,
Andy, if we were really going to Linklater this series, we would wait to talk about the next movie for 9 years.
That's true. We should do that. We should. Yeah. Put a hold on this series for 9 years.
For 9 years. Another 500 movies.
And then we'll do Boyhood, but we're going to just release segments of it. Or we'll come back and we'll record it every, 6 months or year. And then we'll release our review in 12 years. What do you think?
In 12 years, all at once. Yeah. But by then, because we have no restraint, it'll be like a 13-hour review.
It'll be much longer than the movie itself.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. We'll be right back for our ratings. But first, here's the trailers for next week's movie, Before Sunset.
So listen, here's the deal. This is what we should do. You should get off the train with me here in Vienna and come check out the town. What? Come on, it'll be fun. All right. Think of it like this. Jump ahead 10, 20 years, and you're married. And only your marriage doesn't have that same energy that it used to have. You start to think about all those guys you've met in your life and what might have happened if you picked up with one of them.
Let me get my bag.
9 years ago, two strangers met by chance and spent a night in Vienna that ended before sunrise. they are about to meet for the first time since.
Hi.
Hello.
I can't believe you're here.
Well, I live here in Paris.
I wanted to talk to you for so long, you know, that now...
Me too. How long do we have? 20 minutes and 30 seconds?
No,
Let's go.
No, we got more than that.
Now they have one afternoon to find out if they belong together.
I remember that night better than I do entire years.
Do you look any different? I do.
I'd have to see you naked.
What?
Let's get on that boat. Come on, it'll be fun.
You don't have time.
Oh, God, why don't we exchange phone numbers and stuff? Why didn't we do that?
Past is the past. It was meant to be that way.
What? You really believe that? I have these dreams. I'm in the car, and a buddy of mine is driving me downtown, and I'm staring out the window, and I think I see you.
What does it mean, the right man? The love of your life? The concept is absurd. The idea that we can only be complete with another person is evil, right?
I'm just happy to see you, even if you've become an angry, manic depressive activist. I still like you. I still enjoy being around you. Like if somebody were to touch me, I would dissolve into molecules.
I want to see if you stay together or if you dissolve into molecules.
How am I doing?
What if you had a second chance with the one that got away?
It's time for Letterboxd. Andy?
Yes, it is. You know what we like? We like Letterboxd.
It's our favorite thing. It's our favorite social network for movie lovers. And if you fall in love with it like we have, you can jump over there and get your own pro or patron membership. You can support the team at Letterboxd, but more than anything, you can get rid of ads, which is great. Just use the discount code NEXTREEL or visit thenextreel.com/letterboxd and it'll knock 20% right off, and it works for renewals as well. Are you a 5-star and a big shining beating heart? Is that where you are on this?
I'm laughing because of the joke, the in joke that we have from I don't even know what the finest hours that has permeated this whole thing for so many years now, that so many people are going to listen to this and never have any clue as to what you're talking about. It's the strangest.
But you don't say it. It's just they won't even know what part of that last sentence was from the finest hours.
They'll probably figure it out because it's the one that sounds really weird. We're like, why is he saying it like that? The finest hours, folks. Yeah. Film board episode.
We quote, loved it.
All right.
Okay. 5 stars and a heart from Andy.
It's not 5 stars. But I really, really connect with the characters. I find their journey inspiring and emotional and really unique. I'm torn if this is a 4 or a 4.5 star for me. It's like in that zone. It's one of those two. I feel like for the moment I'm going to say 4, but that could shift. No, I'm going to just say 4.5. I just really loved it. So 4.5.
4.5. Really tickling the top with that.
Is that how you describe it?
as you might expect.
Top tickler?
You're a real top tickler at 4.5 stars. I don't care for it as much. I am a 2-star on this one right now. It probably would have been higher. I'm not even going to give it a heart right now. It's like a 2-star. But 2-star celebrates the things that I did like about it just enough to offset the things that I really didn't. I don't need to watch it again. I'm kind of done. But who knows? Maybe the sequel is the one that's going to keep me coming back for more. Maybe that's it. Maybe I just don't like young people.
That's probably it. Get off my lawn.
I am a
Jesse,
curmudgeon. I'm a curmudgeon.
Yeah.
Go have sex somewhere else. Not my lawn.
Well, remember, everybody, go to thenextreel.com/letterboxd. You can get your patron or pro membership, and it does work for renewals as well. Don't forget, we've mentioned a few times that members get to hear a pre-show chat. There's also a post-show. And this is something that you can get by going to thenextreel.com/membership, and you can learn more about what we offer. You get bonus content in the episodes. You get your episodes early. You get all sorts of just member bonus episodes that only members get to hear. A monthly member bonus episode. We do flick chart re-rankings. We do retakes, which is kind of an overarching look at an entire series after the series is done. So members get tons and tons of stuff. So check it out. You can learn more about it. at thenextreel.com/membership.
So what did you think about Before Sunrise? We want to know. Hop into the Show Talk channel on Discord, where we'll be talking about this movie this week.
When the movie ends,
our conversation begins. Letterboxd giveth, Andrew.
As Letterboxd always doeth.
Did you go high or low?
I went high. Same rating I gave it, 4.5 stars.
Okay, well, I went low, which is lower than me. And this is a referred review from who did this. This is Blot. Ben Lott just posted this, which is a 0.5 star from Roundstone, who says, quote, "White people talking about pseudo-philosophical BS for 2 hours is so riveting and mind-blowing," end quote. This is like Anne Hathaway's love speech in Interstellar extended to 2 hours with another person trying really effing hard to hold a conversation with her so he can smash. Oh, Anne Hathaway. You know what? If they remake this movie, that's what's so great about that. This is a bloomin' onion of gift in this review, is that I could actually see Anne Hathaway saying, I would do that movie. I'd play the Julie Delpy role, and I'd do it in a French accent. What do you got?
I've got a 4.5 star rating by James Shafrillis, who has this to say, "Damn, I really wanted to see that play with the cow."
The guys walking away with making horns on their heads, which is interesting because in France, at least, that means you're a cuckold, right? If somebody does that to you, it's an indicator that your wife is sleeping with somebody else, but you don't know it. That you have horns, but you're not, but you don't know it. And I don't know what that means in Austria. Like, is that the same thing? Or was he literally only, is it just surface? He was only saying that he was a cow.
I thought it was surface, but I didn't know all of that. So I just assumed he's like, no, really, I'm the cow. I'm the cow. I walk around like a dog and I pick up sticks for people that they throw.
He was just so rude about it. Well, not rude. He was of the place. And I just felt like maybe that was a thing that he was saying, like, you don't know, you're in you're in this budding relationship with this woman. You don't know what everything is about. Like,
he was really only rude at the beginning when they're like, English, do you speak English? He's like, could you speak German for a change?
It was so good. I'm sorry, nothing. I don't know. Nothing.
Dankeschön, Letterboxd.
It is hard to believe we have been having in-depth weekly conversations about movies since 2011.
Oh, you're telling me. Producing this show week after week is so much fun, but it does require a ton of work behind the scenes. If you'd like to help support our efforts, one easy way is by using our originals page when shopping for books and movies that we've covered.
Your purchases made through our links give us a small commission at no extra cost to you, and allow us to keep having these great discussions.
The originals page at thenextreel.com/originals links to the source material from all of our adapted film discussions. Purchasing through our links support the show at no extra cost to you.
In season 12, the focus was big franchises and series. We covered both Paddington films, adapted from the beloved children's book character created by Michael Bond.
Oh, I love those films so much.
Hugh Grant is perfect.
For our Pitch Perfect series, the first film was adapted from Mickey Rapkin's nonfiction book about collegiate a cappella competitions.
It's like a short story of my life, literally. I lived college a cappella.
Sing it, brother.
I lived college a cappella.
I didn't mean literally.
You know who you're talking to, right? The Twilight Saga dominated the season with 5 films adapted from Stephenie Meyer's vampire romance novels, Twilight, New Moon, Eclipse, and the 2 Breaking Dawn parts.
Dominated with awkward romance and nonsense logic is more like it.
That too.
Another Thin Man brought us back to Dashiell Hammett's only Thin Man sequel based on other Hammett material, The Farewell Murder, that wasn't just based on the characters from the first film.
We talked about Trainspotting and its sequel, T2 Trainspotting, adapted from Irvine Welsh's novels.
I hate the sequel's name.
I do too.
And the entire Lord of the Rings trilogy adapted from J.R.R. Tolkien's epic fantasy series.
Love these.
Extended editions all the way, baby.
Plus, all the Mission Impossible films based on the 1960s TV series.
And we've still got at least one more to go.
Members got to hear us chat about The Hustler and The Color of Money, adapted from Walter Tevis's books.
Get all of these books and more at our originals page, thenextreel.com/originals.
Start your next read from the movies we've covered at thenextreel.com/originals.